President Rodrigo Duterte's term will end in 2 weeks. For 6 years, we put people on a list and called them drug addicts. Many of those people ended up dead. We also put people on a list and called them communists. Some of them we called terrorists. People on those lists also ended up dead. We went soft on our territorial claim in the West Philippine Sea and called China our good friend. Hello, I am Lian Wan, and you are listening and watching to the Law of Duterte Land podcast, a name that will inevitably change on July 1. But we will continue to discuss controversial policies of the executive, gaps in the law, and court decisions that shake long-standing principles in the legal profession. For one of the final episodes under the Duterte government, we will talk to retired Supreme Court Senior Justice Antonio Carpio, a stable force on the bench for 18 long years, and a guidepost to lawyers up to this day. He left a rich jurisprudence on the Bill of Rights, including free speech. Thank you, Justice Carpio, for the time and welcome to the podcast.
Thank you also for inviting me, Leon.
Justice Carpio, first question is a blunt question. The drug war has been much of the centerpiece of the Duterte government when you talk about the rule of law. For you, was it constitutional, the entire campaign against drugs?
Well, for me, the drug war was clearly unconstitutional. The PNP directive under Operation Tokhang was to neutralize the supposed drug offender. The word used was neutralize. In fact, the phrase used was neutralize street-level targets. This is a phrase used in the PNP circular. To neutralize means to kill. This is obviously illegal and unconstitutional. So my opinion is the drug war was based on an unconstitutional directive.
So this is the PNP CMC from July 2016 that was implemented by the architect of the drug war, si Senator Bato de la Rosa. So it's based on that.
Yes, this is clearly it's stated there in the circular of the PNP.
Yeah, sir, para sa inyo, ano yung worst feature ng drug war? Kasi merong yung tokhang, yung knock and plead, merong yung drop box ng mga barangay, yung pagpatay kapag nag-resist, di umano, nag-neutralize. What for you was the worst feature of it?
Well, the worst feature is clearly the killing of alleged drug offenders, officially placed at over 6,000 killed and unofficially over 25,000 killed. That's a lot of people killed. I mean, that would qualify in any court of law, in any international tribunal, as a crime against humanity. That's the worst feature.
Justice, for you ba, just the seemingly benign act of putting the word neutralize there dun sa circular ng PNP, did that enable everything? Did that enable all the killings? Was that the root of the problem?
Well, to neutralize means to kill. That's the word used in operations of law enforcement agencies, even in the military. Neutralize. That means you do everything to stop him from breathing, to stop him from doing what he was doing. So that's and that was how the policemen on the ground took it. That's why you have over 25,000 people killed.
Justice, meron bang kahinaan yung may inherent kahinaan ba yung system natin, whether justice or police, na naglagay ng neutralized na word sa circular, then suddenly kayang-kaya na nilang pumatay. It enabled it and went on for 6 years and, as you said, rose to 25,000. Did our system allow it, enable it, allowed it to happen?
Well, the president himself said, kill, kill, kill. He said, I will defend you if you kill. And he said it several times. It's all there in video. So neutralize means to kill because he has been mentioning the word kill, kill, kill.
That's Justice, the word of one man subverted whatever strength we had in our justice system. Basta sinabi niyang pumatay ka, papatay yung mga tao sa baba.
Yeah, because he's the commander in chief. He gives instruction. He exercises control over the police. That's an accepted principle of law, that he has control over the police department, because he controls the ILD chief, he controls the PNP chief.
Right. Just I'm gonna move on sa International Criminal Court. Although it is on pause because of the deferral request, it's still technically being investigated by the ICC. What's your view on that as a former magistrate of the Supreme Court? Ano mas prefer mo, Justice? We solve it domestically, or is there a value on leaving it to the ICC?
Well, under Philippine law, the president is immune from suit while in office. That means he cannot be investigated, he cannot be prosecuted for any offense, any wrongdoing while in office. And of course, this president also has the majority in both houses of Congress. So Congress cannot also impeach him because of the control of his party over Congress. Now, under the Rome Statute, the ICC will come in only if the Philippine government is unwilling or unable to genuinely carry out the investigation or prosecution of the person accused. So that is satisfied under this situation, because legally the president is immune from suit. He cannot be investigated. In fact, he's the head of the investigatory arm of the government. As president, he controls the Department of Justice, which conducts the investigation. He controls the police, which conducts the investigation. Now, the president also cannot be sued. The Supreme Court said a sitting president cannot be sued for any act while in office. So, what is a remedy if the president commits impunity? Like, you have this massive number of people being killed in his war on drugs. The only recourse really is for us to welcome the entry of the International Criminal Court under the Rome Statute, because that is the only remedy available now. Otherwise, the president will continue doing what he has been doing. And in fact, he has been doing it. Even during the pandemic, we've seen the killings continue.
Just sabi mo nga, by being immune from suit, that kind of rendered us unable and unwilling technically to investigate dahil nga immune siya. But come July 1, he's no longer the president. He no longer would be immune from suit. So does that still preserve the jurisdiction of the ICC pag July 1 na?
Because jurisdiction once acquired continues. So the ICC acquired jurisdiction at the time the complaints were filed and the investigation proceeded. So under most jurisdictions, jurisdiction once assumed continues. And that's the principle that I think will apply also.
And do you think, Justice, that the ICC will still be the best remedy to prosecute the former president under President Marcos?
Well, I think so, because obviously it's beyond the influence of any political party in the Philippines.
All right, Justice. Going back to the drug war, what do you think? Do you think that the drug war left irreversible damage on our justice system, and what would that be?
Yes, it left a great damage. I would not say it's irreversible, because we can still reverse it by doing justice, by bringing to justice the people responsible for it, compensating the victims. Now, the failure of the justice system to stop the killing of over 25,000 helpless, defenseless, and poor Filipinos in an alleged police operation to enforce the law, that is a failure. that's the damage to our justice system.
So if President elect Ferdinand Bongbong Marcos Jr. were to claim that he would fix so that people no longer are killed under the drug war, what about the justice system? Should he or even Justice Secretary Boying Remulla focus on to make sure na wala nang helpless na mamamatay na tao under the anti-drugs campaign?
Well, the president-elect has said the right thing here. He said the war on drugs will continue under the framework of the law. That means the Constitution will be followed and existing law will be followed. So that's the way I read it. But of course, we have to watch if he will walk the talk. I mean, if they will actually implement that they will uh, go after drug lords, those who traffic in drugs, illegal drugs, in accordance with law. That means they will not just kill, and kill.
Would it give you comfort if the first act of of his PNP chief would be to revoke yung July 2016 circular that was the mother of all?
Yes, that would send a message to the police, all the police personnel that do not neutralize, do not kill anymore.
Mm.
That has to be done first, because if he says we will conduct the war on drugs in accordance with the framework of the law, that's music to my ears. But we have to watch if they will actually walk the talk now. So the
Yeah.
first thing is to revoke that, because that is the authority to kill.
Just as how about yung listahan, yung penchant for list, penchant for reporting to your kagawad, barangay captain na yung kapitbahay ko drug addict, and these people end up on a list and it makes them nervous. That was also a DILG circular. Would it also be helpful to revoke
Yes,
that
that's
hearing?
part of that circular. That's part of these. This is a series of circulars. They're all related. They'll have to redo this, because when you say framework of the law, that means if there's a reported crime, it has to be investigated before you barge into the house of the person being accused. And you cannot just barge; you must get a warrant of arrest. That's
Mm.
the meaning of framework of the law. You
Yeah.
cannot knock and then enter, because you need a warrant of arrest to enter, a search warrant.
Yeah. Just as sabi mo nga, President-elect Marcos has said he will continue the drug war under the framework of the law. That was his statement to the Swedish ambassador. So it's all been, the statements have all been coming from diplomatic meetings, and that's very different from how President Duterte did it. Very hostile siya sa mga ambassadors, sa mga generally to international institutions, international order. Do you think President Duterte's rhetoric and hostility towards international systems in general also did damage to the Philippines' rule of law and our observance of the rule of law?
Well, it affected our relations with these countries, because, like the EU, they, I think, withheld certain assistance because of the violation of human rights. But that's I would not say that affected too much the rule of law. What really affected the rule of law was the Operation Tokhang, which was premised on neutralizing alleged offenders of the uh, of the law against illegal drugs.
Next, Justice, are moving on to another topic of your expertise, the West Philippine Sea. President-elect Marcos has said on record in one of his press conferences that he will use the Hague ruling, but his predecessor, President Duterte, took a defeatist stance. It was almost like abandoning the Hague ruling and saying that we cannot use it. How is his stance? How is Duterte's stance on the Hague ruling affect how our footing and our claim for the West Philippine Sea? Did it weaken it to some extent?
Well, the arbitral ruling still stands, but it has been the enforcement has been delayed because of the statements and actuations of President Duterte. Remember, uh, when at the start of his administration, he said, "I'm setting aside the ruling in exchange for loans and investments from China," and those loans and investments never materialized. Only a very small amount arrived. So he suspended the enforcement of the arbitral award for nothing. Actually, he was taken for a ride by China, and at the start of his administration, he said to the Navy, "Patrol only our territorial sea. Do not patrol the exclusive economic zone in the West Philippine Sea." That's against the Constitution. The Constitution says the state must protect its marine wealth in its exclusive economic zone. And he said, "I am inutile when it comes to defending the West Philippine Sea." He cannot be inutile. He's the president, and the president is the commander-in-chief of the armed forces, and the commander-in-chief is tasked under the Constitution to protect the territorial integrity, including the maritime zones of the country. I mean, that's abandonment of his duty. He said also in the SONA, in one of the SONAs, that China is in possession of the West Philippine Sea. China is not in possession of the West Philippine Sea. The West Philippine Sea, our EEZ in the West Philippine Sea is larger than our total land area. And obviously, China is not in possession of that entire area. China is only in possession of 7 geologic features where it reclaimed these geologic features. And that's a tiny amount. It's less than 3% of the West Philippine Sea. And Duterte also said the Chinese fishermen can fish in our exclusive economic zone in the West Philippine Sea. That's again against the Constitution, which says our marine wealth in our exclusive economic zone shall be reserved exclusively for Filipino citizens. So he has been violating the Constitution. And President Duterte said, I love President Xi Jinping. He will protect me from coup, from our own military." This is the commander-in-chief of the armed forces of the Philippines saying, "President Xi will protect me from any mutiny from my armed forces." I mean, he was declaring to the world that he was a vassal of President Xi. That's not. How can you protect the West Philippine Sea when you accept publicly that your protector against coup by your own military is President Xi, who is the architect of the Chinese expansion in the South China Sea? And early on, President Duterte said, "I am aligning myself with the ideological flow of China and Russia. It will be the Philippines, China, and Russia against the world." That's not an independent foreign policy. The Constitution says we must adopt an independent foreign policy. He was making himself a part of a triumvirate. I don't know if China and Russia even accept him as their co-equal. He was trying to elevate himself as a co-equal with President Xi and President and Putin. So that's not an independent foreign policy. So all of this really undermined the arbitral award, but it's still there. He just did not enforce it. We can enforce it under a new administration. Thank you.
Just as you always say, the battle for the West Philippine Sea, our territory, is a generational fight. And this was 6 years under Duterte. Add to that disinformation and misinformation, and the popular president saying that he loves Xi Jinping. So how did 6 years of being soft on China and being passive and defeatist on our arbitral ruling and our claim affect this generational fight? What I'm asking is, did we lose a generation in this fight?
Well, we were delayed by 6 years, maybe more if you consider that we have to restart again. But that's part of geopolitics. I mean, we cannot slow down because of that. We cannot be discouraged because of that. We have to press on. The ruling stands. The new president says, "I will assert the ruling. The world is behind us. More countries are now supporting us. The EU, the US, Japan, Australia, India, they're all supporting us." And the world now understands the value of the Arbitral Award, that this is needed to preserve the international order in our oceans and seas of our planet. And the rule of law is now very important because of what Russia is doing in Ukraine, is thrashing the rule of law, and that's why it's really important to prevent China from doing that in the South China Sea. And I think more people understand now the value of the Arbitral Award, and I think we can move on, we can build on this. Thank you.
Justice, the president-elect always says he listens. So if you were to listen to you, what would be your recommendation as a strong first move to get back on better footing in asserting our right in the West Philippines? Is there any legal move or any political move that would send a strong message?
Well, first of all, we have unfinished business in the West Philippine Sea because we have not filed our extended continental shelf claim in the West Philippine Sea. Off the coast of Luzon, facing the South China Sea, we have an extended continental shelf claim. And Vietnam filed their extended continental shelf claim in the South China Sea. Malaysia did, but we have not. But we're almost there. I mean, our executive agencies, NAMRIA, DFA, they all prepared already. It's ready for filing. But President Duterte said, do not file. We can do that. We can file that because like in the Benham Rice, we filed and nobody opposed it. And it was awarded to us. The UN Commission on the Limits of the Continental Shelf confirmed that we have an extended continental shelf in Benham Rice. So in the South China Sea, we can also claim our extended continental shelf claim. China cannot oppose it because the 9-dash line has been struck down by a UN tribunal, and the UN Commission on the Limits of the Continental Shelf is a creation of UNCLOS, so they have to respect the decision of the tribunal. So we have to file that because Vietnam already filed their extended continental shelf claim, and Malaysia also did. So what's keeping us from filing it? So we can file that. That's a low-hanging fruit. And then we can enter into an agreement with Vietnam, Malaysia, Brunei, Indonesia to submit to compulsory arbitration our overlapping claims because our extended continental shelf overlap with Japan, with Vietnam in the Spratly area. We have overlapping EEZ boundary with Malaysia. We have to delineate that. So we can all agree to submit this to arbitration. And Malaysia and Vietnam invited us before, during the time of President Aquino, to submit this to arbitration. And this is a low-hanging fruit because this is a no-brainer. Because under UNCLOS, if you have an overlap with your maritime zones, you can just agree to demarcate it at the median line. Hating kapatid, just split it. And everybody will agree to that. And so if we do that, the ASEAN countries, Vietnam, Malaysia, Brunei, Indonesia, and the Philippines, will no longer have maritime disputes among themselves because this is separate from the territorial dispute. It will now be only China that has a maritime dispute with the ASEAN coastal states. And that's a big improvement because now China is saying, oh, kayo nga, you cannot agree among yourselves on your boundaries. So we can settle that. That's a low-hanging fruit. Once we have that settlement, we can submit that to arbitration, and we know the outcome. It's just the median line. Then we can use that as the foundation of a convention on the South China Sea. That convention will say that all these countries, Vietnam, Malaysia, Brunei, Indonesia, the Philippines, have their exclusive economic zones as provided in the Arbitral Award. And in the exclusive economic zone, there's freedom of navigation on our flight for all countries. And in the extended continental shelf, the same. There's freedom of navigation on our flight. And we will invite the US and EU,
mm,
Japan, Australia, and India to accede to the convention because that's what they want also. They they want they assert that there's freedom of navigation in the EEZ and external controls of the South China Sea because that's what UNCLOS says. So they will join. And in that process, Vietnam, which does not have uh, an arbitral award against China, will now see the world recognizing their exclusive economic zone. All the coastal states in ASEAN uh, will enjoy the recognition of their EEZ and external shelves by the rest of the world because the rest of the world will subscribe to that convention. Only China will be isolated here.
mm.
So we can do that. We can do this without the participation of China. So this is now the world accepting our position in a document which strengthens now our rights as against China.
Mm.
So
Just
this should be done. This should be the direction of our foreign policy. Thank you.
now that you mention isolating China, just what I've observed from President-elect Marcos, he seems strong na nga, on asserting our arbitral ruling. He also seems to be restoring ties with the United Nations and the United States, but he's also not abandoning friendliness to China. He's attended 2 conferences in the last week. He said yesterday that China is our strongest partner in the pandemic, and he has said in the campaign that hindi siya naniniwala sa Cold War attitude na ang kalaban mo, kalaban ko rin, or something like that. So he seems to be preserving the ties to China. Is that wise? And can he truly and completely assert our claim in the West Philippine Sea while still being friends with China?
Well, we should continue our economic and trade relations with China. Vietnam has a very strong trade and economic relation with China, but it's also very protective of its sovereign rights, of its EEZ. Vietnam sends its Coast Guard on a face-to-face confrontation against the Chinese Coast Guard in its exclusive economic zone. You can have good trade and economic relations with China, but you have to be protective of your maritime rights, and that's what that's the position of Vietnam. Also, the position of Malaysia and Indonesia. Recently, Malaysia sent its survey ship to test drill in its exclusive economic zone. The Chinese Coast Guard went there and told them to stop, but they continued. China warned Malaysia not to continue. Malaysia continued, and Malaysia was able to finish their drilling. And the same thing happened in the Natunas. The Indonesians conducted surveys in their EEZ in the Natuna, in North Natuna. China said stop because that's within the 9-dash line. Indonesia ignored and continued and completed. So you just have to be firm in defending your sovereign rights. What did Duterte do in Reed Bank? Duterte said, okay, Forum Energy, continue your exploration. He lifted the moratorium. But when China said no, Duterte backed down. He said, don't proceed. It's a contrast. Malaysia continued and got away with it, just finished their drilling. Indonesia did the same. But here in Reed Bank, President Duterte, with an arbitral award, with a mutual defense treaty with the U.S., just uh, just folded up and
Hmm.
told the foreign marriage don't continue.
Hmm.
So
Sir,
we
how
have to be assertive, and we should not be afraid. Just look at the example of Malaysia. Malaysia has very good relations, trade and economic relations with Vietnam, but when it comes to their sovereign rights in their EZ, they are very protective and very assertive. Thank you.
Justice, how do you read China's moves so far? Are they preparing for a long game in which they will increase their activities in our territory into making us, submit to them, or, you know, uh, trying to aggressively come at us so we submit to them. What's your reading on China's move so far?
Well, China is playing the long game with carrot and stick. Will offer you loans and investments, but will ask you to implicitly recognize their claim. But of course, we will not agree to that. Malaysia will not agree to that. Indonesia will not agree to that. Vietnam will not agree to, and the Philippines should not agree to that. We have an arbitral award, so they will play the long game. They will have carrot and stick, but we should be aware that we have to assert our sovereign rights.
Right. Thank you, Justice. Justice, are you open to being consulted by the Marcos government on West Philippine Sea issues?
Well, I'm always open because that's my advocacy. If they ask for my advice on the West Philippine Sea, I will tell them, and they don't have to ask me. I write about it. I talk about it in webinars like this. I give
Yeah.
my what should we do, the steps that we should do. It's there. It's open source.
Thanks, Justice. I'm moving on to a wrap of this topic. I'm going to talk about the what some lawyers say was a different epidemic in the Duterte government is that the high numbers of lawyers killed, 66 in 6 years of the Duterte government, more than any other president since Marcos Sr. combined. Justice, how did that change the landscape when lawyers are the ones who are killed and some are red tagged and some were tried to be investigated for links allegedly to the communist front?
Well, when you kill lawyers who are defending those who are accused by the government, you're sending a message to lawyers: do not defend those who are killed by the government because you yourself will be killed. So when a lawyer takes a case because the surviving spouse wants the lawyer to sue the government, the response of the government is to harass, intimidate the lawyer. That you do that, you will also be killed. That's the message. When lawyers are killed, lawyers who are defending their clients against the government, when they are killed, that's the message being sent. And that message has been sent also during martial law under Ferdinand Marcos Sr. The same message. So,
Now,
well, thankfully, there are lawyers who, despite these threats, continue defending because that is their duty to defend those who are oppressed. Thank you.
you mentioned that it was the same threat, same message during the government of the late dictator Ferdinand Marcos. My second question was, the lawyers called the epidemic lawfare, the weaponization of laws against perceived enemies, and they said that President Duterte did that very well. But was he the first Philippine president to do it, to weaponize the law, and was he the worst in doing it? Or was Marcos worse than him? Marcos Sr. worse than him?
Well, Marcos was worse, I think, in weaponizing the law because he used the law to detain, to close down. He used the declaration of martial law, supposed to be a power under the Constitution, to close down Congress itself, to shut down the press, to prevent people from traveling, to detain them. I mean, that's really the height, no? The height of using the law against the people. For Duterte, he used it also, and that's exemplified by the prosecution of Laila de Lima. The Laila de Lima, a sitting senator, spent the last 5 years in jail because of trumped up charges. One by one, all the witnesses against her have recanted. Of course, all these witnesses are most of the principal witnesses are convicts,
Yeah.
and of course their testimony will be polluted already. I mean, how they're not credible at all, and I think Senator De Lima should be released already. There's no probable cause against her. Uh, at the very least, the evidence of against her is weak, and under the law, under the Constitution, she is entitled to bail if if the evidence against her is not strong, and definitely it's not strong. Thank you.
I still clearly remember your dissenting opinion on that case, Justice, and you called it the grossest injustice ever committed in front of Filipinos and the world. You were saying, Justice, kanina na Marcos Sr. detained enemies, shut down the press. Some of these things Duterte also did in various shapes or forms. ABS-CBN was shot also. People were detained. Also, Chief Justice was ousted through Cowaranto. The travel was restricted when Boracay was shut down. What for you was the worst that Duterte ever did, or at least his subordinates did in the mantle of his policy on the rule of law? What was the worst novel legal action that you think he did with Solgen Jose Calida?
Well, I think the worst act that he did against the law is the Operation Tokhang, because over 25,000 poor, defenseless Filipinos were killed. Can you just imagine? Over 25,000 poor and defenseless Filipinos were killed in an operation supposed to be to enforce the law. And I think that's the worst thing. I mean, that a president can do. And he even said that it's not enough because I can do more. I can be, if I can better the record of Hitler by killing. Hitler only killed how many million Jews? I can do more than that. I mean, 25,000 is a lot of people being killed. It's one, even one is one too many. This is the one that should be redressed, and we should not stop redressing this injustice. We have to settle this. We have to put an end to this impunity so that it will never happen again. That over 25,000 Filipinos are just killed like flies. Thank you.
Now that you put it, I don't know how to phrase my next question, which would have been even worse, Justice, than passing the anti-terror law. You were one of the petitioners to that. What was the impact of passing the anti-terror law in his last year? And overall, what is his most negative impact on the rule of law? That would be my last question.
You're talking of the anti-terror law? Yeah. Well, the anti-terror law, the heart and soul of the anti-terror law is supposed to be the power of the Anti-Terrorism Council to order the arrest of people without a court warrant. Diba? It says there to order the arrest and to extend their arrest before filing a criminal case. That's obviously against the Constitution, because the Constitution says only a judge can issue a warrant of arrest. And you have to file the criminal case under the law within 3 days. And the Supreme Court said the ATC does not have the power to order the arrest of anyone. And so that entire law, the heart of the law, was taken out in the decision. Actually, I think the petitioners won in that case, because the heart and soul of the law was the power of the council to order the arrest without a court warrant. And the court said, the court did not strike down that section, but it said it has to be interpreted this way because this is how the OSG interprets it, that this power to arrest without a warrant of the court refers to warrantless arrest and the rules of court. Warrantless arrest are valid because you are arresting a person committing an act before a criminal act before you in the presence of a police officer or in the presence of a private person. We all accept that's valid, that's constitutional. That's in the rules of court promulgated by the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court has the power to promulgate rules. And that has never been questioned. And
Mm.
everybody agrees that, of course, you can arrest. If somebody is about to kill somebody, you can stop it and arrest that person. And the Supreme Court said that is the power of the ATC. So
Mm.
actually, the government lost there,
Mm.
because what they wanted, if you look at the records of the Senate, that they wanted the ATC to have the power to order the arrest of somebody because they needed time to gather evidence to strengthen their case when they filed a criminal complaint. Because they said, whenever we file, the case is dismissed because we don't have enough evidence. But when the Supreme Court said this refers only to warrantless arrest, in warrantless arrest, you have the strongest evidence because you arrest the person in the act of committing a crime. That's the strongest evidence.
Mm.
And if you arrest a person in the act of committing a crime and the crime is punishable by uh, reclusion temporal and upwards, then he can be denied bail under the law, no? And then the rules of court also. So nothing changed. They enacted the law to change the system. The Supreme Court said nothing has changed. The
Mm.
rules of court will be the one that will be followed by the ATC. So actually, if you look at the objective of the law, as the authors wanted it, that never materialized. That was struck down by the court because the OSG himself said this is how it should be interpreted, because the OSG knew it would be struck down if they followed the letter of the law. Thank you.
Thanks, Justice. But as you said, Section 29 was not explicitly struck down. Do you trust, Justice, that the law enforcers, we're talking about the law enforcers who killed at least 6,000 people, do you think they would read the decision, hundreds of pages of it, and interpret it the way you did, and will implement it in
That's
that
not
way
how
you
I,
described?
that's not how I interpret. That's the Supreme Court
Yeah.
saying it. That this applies only, Section 20 applies only to warrantless arrests. So the ATC cannot order the arrest of person without a court warrant.
These
So
law, but these law enforcers, Justice, have been overzealous in the past. Do you think they will read that and think, oh, ito yung ibig sabihin ng Korte Suprema at susundin ko ang nasa rules of
well,
court lamang?
well, if they don't follow it, they will be sued. And just like the recently, the Supreme Court voided the warrant of arrest on those on several people all over Luzon. They had a joint operation to serve the warrant of arrest, and several people were killed. The warrant of arrest were struck down by the court, no, by the RTC, I think.
Yeah.
So it will be like that. If they don't follow it, anyone can question. I think they will follow because it's very clear that ATC, because the ordinary policeman cannot arrest without instruction from under that law from the ATC, but the ATC cannot issue any more an order because the Supreme Court said you cannot do that.
Thank you, Justice. Here's to hoping for better days and for a more human rights-based implementation of the law and upholding the rule of law. Thank you so much. That was retired Supreme Court Senior Justice Antonio Carpio. This is Lian Buan. You watched or listened to the Law of Duterte Land podcast.
Thank you, Lian, for inviting me.